Joey Nuda has seen it all, from World Cup winners to meltdowns in the change rooms. This is Tales from the Kit Room. Joey, 30 years in football, where do we start? You're an Apia fan who got to work for Marconi.
Correct.
How did that take place?
I'm a masseur by profession, a massage therapist, if you want to be technical. And I was working for Stan Avancic, who was the physio at Marconi. He'd come over from Sydney United, and Stan got me involved with the youth teams, but then he slowly introduced me into the first grade dressing room with Zoran Matic as coach. So we're talking 98, 99. Great experience. So that's how it started.
And you worked with Farina at Marconi.
I did, yes.
Lee Sterry.
Eddie Krenčević.
And Eddie Krenčević.
Yeah.
It was a great era of football back then.
Yeah. Great era of football, great players. And I think to be in that dressing room with so many professionals, and there were a lot of internationals I seem to forget. We had Dominic Longo, Mark Babbage, Brad Maloney was in that dressing room, Vlado Zoric, Brendan Reno, Buddy Farah. So yeah, there was some great players. Mike Smith, Ante Kovic, if I recall, was the goalkeeper. So you were in the room. It just had an unbelievable feel about it.
There was one particular match against Northern Spirit that it got a little bit testy between Frank Farina and Robbie Slater. Tell us about that.
There had been some words said leading up to it. So it's the first leg semi-final. So we go to North Sydney to play, Friday night game. And you could just feel the tension in the dressing room. You just knew it was going to be a battle. I remember the team went out to warm up, and they'd warm up on the North Sydney Oval number 2 in those days. And I'd never worked at North Sydney Oval. So I've come out from under the dressing room to have a look. And the house was full. It was a full house. The Verve's Bittersweet Symphony was playing over the speakers. I remember it was a great night. But then the game started and it just got out of hand. It was Ian Crook putting on a 2-foot tackle on Darren McDonald. Dominic Longo got split open, I remember, and Dom was one of the hardest players that I worked with. Absolute champion. And that dressing room at halftime resembled a war zone. Now, who was getting stitched up? Who was getting cleaned? I don't recall the score. It may have been a draw, but I do remember after the game, there were words and a melee, as you would call it, outside the dressing room. And it was Frank and Robbie Slater. So there were bodies everywhere, but great days. And then the return leg was at Marconi, where we won and got through. The atmosphere was fantastic.
What about a particular Sunday at Marconi Stadium when you were the target of a Gatorade bottle? Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, we were playing Sydney Olympic, Sunday afternoon game. There was a lot of, the rivalry was unbelievable. Something had happened. Now, being an assistant, you're worried about making sure their drinks are ready or whatever. So I'd go in and out, you know. But all I remember was Mike Smith in that heavy Scottish accent saying to Chris Kalantzis, if I remember, "I'm going to do you," right? Mate, I'm unbeknownst to what's going on. Kalantzis had got into the dressing room, which was opposite us at Marconi, grabbed, it was the tub of Gatorade, thrown it in Smith's direction. Smith had moved and I wore the lot. The whole lot. So there I was with lemon and lime, and then it kicked on. It just kicked on in the tunnel. There were bodies. Who was grabbing throats? I remember Peter Sekenis was there at the time, and that, they were into it. And then one of the Marconi directors booted the dressing room door, and I won't repeat what he called the referee. Could have been Micallef Breeze or whoever at the time.
What about, and that must give you a lot of nostalgia seeing Marconi back in the championship now. You know, some of these traditional clubs being given oxygen on the national stage.
I think it's excellent for the game. And I think it's excellent with social media now. There's more exposure. So they play an away game. They actually film flying, getting off the bus. And it's good because it gives those players a sense of, we've got something to aspire to, of playing the A-League and so on. So I think it's great. You can't beat it. You can't. And there's that great saying, people that drink the water should never forget who dug the well. You know, my father followed Apia from 1958 because being a migrant, they were the first Italian team. Marconi came out a little bit later, and I remember as a kid being taken to the derby at Marconi, which were cow paddocks, and that it was a farm. They were farms, but the atmosphere was unbelievable. The time they bought a coffin out from the change room, the supporters with the Apia jersey draped across it. I remember the game where somebody had let a piglet out on the field, so they spent the time. But it was just great, and I did spend some time working for Ray Richards, which was a great experience as well. And Ray was quite a dominant player at Marconi during those years as well, you know, during the mid to late 70s. So, yeah, it was great. I think it's good for the game.
And when you travelled, say, interstate to play South Melbourne, the cauldron of Lakeside Stadium in Middle Park, maybe as it was back then, how was that?
Lakeside Stadium, Lee Sterry's our coach. It's our last game of the season. And I reckon if Konbutsianis had taken a free kick at Richmond, he would have scored that night. They were on fire. We got done 3-1. And I'll never forget that. And the other game that comes to mind is going out to play at Summers Street. That was a cauldron.
Yeah.
I went once with Marconi. We were down 1-0. We ended up winning 3-1. And all I remember was the hospitality after the game. This is pre-nutrition. So you got a couple of trays of chavapi and a few slabs of VB. I do remember that. Yeah. But it was a cauldron. Driving out there, the whole experience. You knew you were in a battle. Yeah.
Joey, let's move on to the young Socceroos. How did that happen? You worked under Ange Postecoglou and some really good assistants back then.
Well, Stan was involved at the time as a physio. He had been to the 20s in, I think, Argentina. And then the Masur pulls out for 2001 under 17s in Trinidad and Tobago. And I got the call up. So we went into camp in Florida. Ange was the coach. And we went into camp. That was quite a hard camp. I remember 2 sessions a day, friendly games. And the story is where it gets a bit juicier. There's 2 things that I do remember. We fly out to Trinidad and Tobago. That morning we're getting ready to go to training and the first tower gets hit at the World Trade Center.
Yeah.
And then by the time we got to training, the second tower had been hit. So, you know, there was that. And then if I can mention, we're playing Croatia. We had a day off 1 or 2 days before and the staff went for a walk. They come back to the hotel and they said, we just met the man. And I said innocently, what, Anthony Mundine's here in Trinidad? And they said, no, Brian Lara, he's going to come to our game on Wednesday night. We're playing Croatia, last match of the group. And I went, yeah, as if Brian Lara's going to come. So I'd get there early with Nelson Delasio. We would set up all the physio gear and whatever. The team arrived. And then I do remember Steve O'Connor saying, I had my back to the team because I was working. Boys, I've got a special guest. And there he was, Brian Lara. The Prince spoke to the team. I remember the talk was about visualisation, how important when he plays, how he sees the ball and whatever. And then we were invited. We won 4-0 and we were invited back to his house after the game. True story. We go, it was on a hill, I remember. The kids are 17. They didn't even know who Lara was, but he did have the blonde British girlfriend at the time. So she naturally got their attention. And here we are standing behind Brian Lara's bar, drinking his beer, and he's got his memorabilia there. And I remember Curtly Ambrose's boot in the cabinet that was about that big. Great days. Yeah, we got knocked out in the next round. We had gone through the group stage and got knocked out in the next round. And that was to, I just had a blank, could have been one of the African teams.
Yeah, and at the time, Ange was the coach of both the 17s and the 20s.
That's correct.
So let's fast forward a few years, okay? A big story. You played Argentina in a friendly in Quilmes.
That's correct.
It was the lead up to the next group of
2005.
2005 World Cup.
So it's 2004.
It was a very important match because tell us a little bit about the team song you wanted to establish within the young Socceroos.
Yeah, we had a great manager, a guy called Andy Theoklitos, champion guy. Michael Theoklitos' brother, champion guy, did everything for the team. At breakfast that morning, I said, look, we don't sing anything after the game. How about we write something down and put up on the wall and the boys will Land Down Under by Men at Work. That's a true story.
With David Clarkson as well.
Yeah, Clarkson was there.
Yeah.
You'd have to mention him. But anyway, no, Clarkie was there. He was our kit man. So I get the butcher's paper, write it out, okay, roll it up, put it in the space case as we took to the game. So we go to Quilmes in Argentina. We've set up, the dressing rooms, you had to step up onto the pitch. And I remember this like it was yesterday. The Argentinians come out to warm up. Now, I had worked against them in the 17s and that. And I looked at them and I said to Andy Theophilus, listen, let's postpone it. Just put the kit back in the thing. We won't have to wash it because we are going to get annihilated here tonight. And by the way, look at the kid out there. He must be the ball boy or whatever. We go out to play. We're on song. We're just playing great football. We're up 2-0. And then they bring this sub on. He was about so big. It was one Lionel Messi. He was playing above his age. So it's the first time I got to see him play. He was brilliant. 2-0, 2-1. I thought, let's get the song out. A couple of minutes to go. So take it out. Blue tack, one. Blue tack that corner. Blue tack this corner. As I'm about to blue tack the last corner, 2-2. The referees extended the time of the game, as they do, because they can't lose to Australia, 2-2. I haven't said a word. I've just rolled it all back up, put it in the box. And then we had to play Chile after that, and Ange was specific. Forget about Argentina. We got Chile.
What was the final score with Argentina?
2-2.
So we defeated 2-2. And what was the situation in Santiago against Chile?
Well, Ange told them, we played Chile, Uruguay, Argentina, then back to Chile. He said to them, forget about Argentina. Great game, it's done. Let's worry about Chile. The boys were still riding on that wave of Argentina. After 15 minutes, we're down 3-0. Ange just gave it to him at half time. But he was right. Great experience, South America, great experience.
Tell me about that version of Ange Postecoglou, because I wouldn't imagine it's changed too much. He wasn't that chummy with any of the players. What was he like for the backroom staff?
Ange was simple. I had done a camp with him in Canberra, filling in for the physios because I could strap and so on, and you knew your place. You didn't say boo. You spoke when you were spoken to. But after the trip, and this isn't patting myself on the back, Ange shook my hand. He thanked me and said, mate, you're welcome back any time, which means you've done your job. But Ange likes people around him that work. You don't overstep the mark, but he's a brilliant coach, sees everything, and Ange never missed a trick. Never.
2003 FIFA World Cup for the under-20s. Yep. You've got Brett Holman, Carl Valeri, Nathan Coe, Alex Wilkinson in that squad.
Alex Brosk was in that squad as well, John T. Richter. Yep. Nathan Coe was the goalkeeper, David Tarker. Scott McDonald was the captain that I remember. So there were quite a few players there that ended up playing overseas or playing in the initial A-League or the early years of the A-League. It was a good squad.
Joey, you topped the group. You beat Brazil in the group stage. Brazil had Fernandinho, Dani Alves, Adriano, legends of the game. What was it like to top a group of that nature?
We went out, the game was a Friday night. This is as I can remember it. After the team had gone out, national anthems and the formalities, I would clean up and just get their fresh kit out and do whatever. Anyway, I've walked out, it could have been 10 or 15 minutes into the game, and I looked up 2-0 and I thought, oh, sugar, we're already down 2-0. But I've read the scoreboard incorrectly. We were leading 2-0. So we ended up beating them 3-2. And it was just phenomenal to beat Brazil at any level. Look, whether they had played their best side or not, I don't know, but you still beat Brazil. So, yeah, we had topped the group, but we were settled where we were, and then we had to move. And I think, getting the players out of that particular routine, it's no excuse, but it was just a great achievement, to top the group and beat Brazil.
Yeah, the young Socceroos played UAE, the host nation, in the round of 16. What went wrong?
David Tarker had captained us against Brazil. Then Scotty McDonald had come back. He had either been suspended or injured, but we didn't have Carl Valeri that night, going off memory. And it was one of those games that just went on. And the more it went on, you knew nobody's going to score here, and whoever does is going to jag a goal. And this is as I remember it. I'm sitting on the esky at the end of the bench because you always play as a priority. Ange is at the far end. I remember it like it was yesterday. Now remember, you're in the UAE, so there's no females in the crowd, so it's just all white, their gowns and so on. The atmosphere was incredible though. They've made a break down the left side of the field. As I remember it, Spase Delevski has turned the attacker back inside instead of showing him the line, for the little I know. He's had this shot, and this shot just sat there for an eternity. It just sat there for an eternity. Nathan Coe has dived, if I recall. It's hit something, bobbled, and this is how, as I remember it, the side net just moved. It was like slow motion. And I've turned. Ange had his head down and he was kicking the bench with the sole of his right foot, going, no, no. If we had gotten through that, who knows if, the big if. And it was just one of those nights, you see.
Tell us about Frank Farina bringing you in for the Socceroos in that friendly in Reading. Who was it against? What was the circumstance?
2003.
Yeah.
It was my 40th birthday. I remember this. Anthony Crea, who had spent a long time with the Socceroos and went to the World Cup in 2006. Anth rings me at home and he says, look, this is a situation. I'm busy with the Olyroos, I think. Can you fill in and do the massage? I said, no. I've just come back from Finland and I don't want to travel 24 hours back over there. So I hung up. I walked outside and I thought, you idiot. You're never going to get this opportunity. Crea, being Crea, God love him, rings me half an hour later and says, mate, I'm not asking you, I'm telling you. And I'm glad I did. So we played in Reading against Jamaica, and I was privileged to work with those players. Paul Ocon was captain, even to do the training sessions and help out. I remember with Paul Barron, I was the goalkeeper coach. So there's Schwarzer standing behind me and he would hit these balls just over my head. If he had hit me, I would have been unconscious. And there's Schwarzer just coming over the top. I knew some of the boys from back in the old National League, but the privilege to be able to work with the best of the best. And the beauty was I worked on Harry Kuehl for 3 days.
Yeah.
Harry was a consummate pro.
At Liverpool at the time.
He was at Liverpool at the time. And Harry, to break the ice, because you never talk to them, you let them, you know, you're in a professional environment. But Harry broke the ice. Where are you from? We were both from Sydney. And in talking, we had read a lot of the same books, so there was a talking point. And I never forget this. Harry's on his back, I'm working on his quads, and I just asked him, what's it like playing at Liverpool? Because I follow Liverpool, and his face changed. And he said, it's everything you want as a footballer. Everything is done for you. All you have to do is concentrate on football. And to watch him prepare, to watch Kevin Muscat prepare, Paul Ocon, Kalatz was in the dressing room. I think Lucas Neal was there at the time. Great blokes. And they were so welcoming, made you feel comfortable. Yeah, great experience. Yeah. I do remember the day before the game, we're having a famil session and I'm getting the balls at the Majeski Stadium, I think you pronounce it. So I'm up the back behind the goals and they're having shooting practice. And I'll never forget this as long as I live. A ball's hit a seat maybe 3 away from me. The sound was unbelievable. Viduka had a shot. Being such a big man and so powerful, it's gone over the goals, over the crossbar, and it's hit this chair. If it had hit me, he would have fractured my sternum, my intestinal tract, everything. Yeah, great blokes. And they were so... You just to be able to sit on that bench, hear the national anthem. I was glad I went. It was a great experience.
Yeah, just some of the biggest names this country's ever produced. And what about Harry Kuehl? If he stays injury free, who knows?
Yeah.
What would happen?
Exactly. Still one of the best players we've produced in this country. Yeah.
Joey, you were there at the start of the A-League with Sydney FC. Tell us a little bit about how raw it was back in those days.
Well, just a very brief how it all came about. I was working on the South American trip. We were in Uruguay. It was a Saturday morning and Ian Crook was putting together a squad. I had no idea, you know, and I always wanted to work in sport full time. So he's putting this squad together. I remember Michael Beecham and a lot of players that had finished their career at that stage of the NSL. And he looked at me and he said, Joey, how would you like to work for Sydney FC? I said, seriously? He said, yeah. Anyway, so we come back from that trip. Ian Crook was living up at Newcastle. He got off the plane, his wife picked him up, went to Newcastle, had a shower, came back, and he signed with Walter Bunyo for Sydney FC. Then I must have rang him every day. What's happening? What's happening? What's happening? So I got an interview. Andy Harper was the CEO at the time. We had an interview. Unfortunately, we didn't come to terms on the money and so forth. I regretted it. I thought, I'm never going to get this opportunity again. Somebody must have done something behind the scenes. Andy Harper rings me in the Solomon Islands for the 20s squad, says you've got the job. So here we are, we're all excited. We've got an office at Bondi Junction, but we've seriously got nothing. We've had nothing. So we had no kit. We had nothing. I remember our first training session was at the stadium. It was for PR. I'm the kit man. They do their warm up, and then they go to play a small-sided game. And Pierre Lippi turns to me and says, "Have you got the bibs?" I said, "What are bibs?" True story. We didn't have any bibs, so I can't remember if they turned their shirts inside out. So, look, the apparel sponsor. I'm not going to. Yeah, it was all new to everybody. So Pierre kept reassuring me, "It's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. Just be patient." So we trained at Parkley. The kit room was the size of a broom closet, and I would travel out of my van. We sourced the laundry out externally. It was, and mind you, I was massaging at the time, so I took the job on as a massage therapist and the equipment manager. I'd never done kit before, so I had to learn as I go. And it was just a battle. It was just a battle and a battle and a battle, because the players had been promised so much, but we hadn't been told about what we had to deliver. So my first day of training, I'll never forget it. Steve Corica pulls up in a Porsche, who pulls up in another Porsche, and I'm thinking to myself, what have I got myself into? I knew Strella, I knew Rudin, I knew a lot of these guys through the old National League. So we were thrown in the deep end. We were 6 staff. That's all we had. And you just had to make it work. Yeah. We were traveling, getting them all kitted out and so on. There's just so much to tell. We'd be training at Parkley, and then you'd hear, "Oh, Joey, we're training at Homebush for the next 4 days," which meant you'd have to get a truck, put 2 portable goals on the back of this truck, drive it to Homebush. Then you get to Homebush, you're setting up a change room, you're not familiar, and you're just making it work. When are we getting food? You get all these questions asked from the players. I'll never forget, and I can tell this story, I'm not going to mention names. I got so excited that I got some new socks for the players for training. So I've put these socks out like gold bullion for the second session in the afternoon. I'm next door doing something. 2 of the senior players that are still involved with the game now, I hear, "Wow, we got new socks." And then the next comment, if I can say it, "Check these out, they're effing shit," right? And I was just deflated. So we did it tough, but Lippi and Crook were the key. Yeah. They were the key to that first year. They were professionals, and any great coach that I've worked with, and I've been lucky to work with a few, always keep the external stuff away from the players. Players don't need to know. We haven't got fun, whatever was going on in the boardroom and so on. They just kept it ticking over. And that's what a good coach did. Okay, well,
Dwight Yorke provided the assist that season for Steve Corica's winning goal in the grand final. But your relationship with Dwight Yorke, he trusted you implicitly. Tell us a little bit about a time where he won big at the casino and other moments.
Whatever they said about Dwight, they can say. I saw it firsthand. What he did out of hours never affected what he did. He came to training as a total professional. I used to call him the snake. He'd always turn up at the last minute, right on time so he wouldn't get fined, shred out of his whatever he was wearing, his Louis Vuitton and Gucci and so on, put his kit on, but he'd go to work. But this particular day, he's called me over and he says, "Have you got a minute?" I said, "Sure, Yorkie." He said, "Can you look after this?" He's unzipped his bag and he's given me a wad of cash.
What, 20, 30K?
It was about 20. 20,000.
Yeah.
He'd been playing at the casino the night before. I lost 20 years of my life holding that money for an hour and a half because I thought, if I lose this. But may I say, Yorkie was brilliant. He was great. A fantastic human being. He was very respectful of what you did, because you remember, these guys have come from big clubs. That's an understatement. So what the kit man did, what the physio did, was all important to them because it was all, Yeah. But he would ask me to look after his watch or his jewellery at time, and I turned to somebody once and said, "This watch is that heavy, I could do arm curls with it." But that was Yorkie. Yeah. And a very quick one, we did a beach session at Bondi. He hated the water, funny enough.
Wow.
Yeah. And he got changed in my van. So here I am with Louis Vuitton shoes, Gucci, Armani, I remember it. He says, "Joey, we're like a pub team here. And I couldn't say anything. I just said, it's all right, Yorkie, it's all right. Just put your stuff in here, I'll look after it. He was brilliant, absolutely brilliant.
All night, Dwight.
Looked after the boys,
Yeah.
put on a harbour cruise for them. You know, we get on the boat, there's no Yorkie next to him, we go around to Piermont to pick him up. There he is waiting for us with Ian Crook at the time, a few others, and Brian Lara. So here we are on a harbour cruise with these people, and Dwight's doing the DJ.
Yeah.
But he was great, looked after the boys, but a top professional.
I remember being thrilled at being asked to call the Sydney FC LA Galaxy match where Beckham played. And I called it with Muskie that day. But what about your memories of that day? I know it was a huge moment in Australian football.
It was huge because Beckham was coming to play. The one memory that does stand, there's two. Clint Bolton, one of the most professional players I ever worked with, in his preparation, everything, and a great bloke, wanted to wear a particular colour goalkeeper jersey. I think it was black. He loved playing in the black. They had changed the colour at the last minute. So I get to the ground, Bob Patterson, God bless him, was our manager. He said, Joey, he's going to have to play in the maroon. I said, well, you're going to have to tell him. So here I am, I've changed it over, I've set up the dressing room, Clint Bolton walks in, and I always set them in numerical order, so he knew where he was sitting, and he just looked at it and said, what's that? I said, well, mate, you're going to have to play in that tonight. I'm thinking, please just swallow, you know. So he played in that colour, and he still maintains that that's why that free kick went in from Beggars. He did get fingertips to it, if you remember, and there is a good photo of that in that. There was that, and the other one, which I didn't know, we were amateur. We were a professional club, but there was a lot of amateur stuff. Tony Popovic was our captain, probably the best captain I've worked with, no ifs or buts. He's gone out, shake Beckham's hand. Beckham gives him a beautiful embroidered pennant, and Popper gave him a handshake. Nothing was prepared.
Right.
I said to Popper, are you serious? He said, yeah. I had nothing to give him to exchange. So they rectified that. And, Great night, full house, the atmosphere. And when he scored that free kick, you know, that's why you do that job. Well, one reason, for those experiences.
Yeah. And tell me about your relationship years later when Alessandro Del Piero came to the club. Obviously the biggest name we've ever had in the A-League. Well, Dwight Yorke, you could argue, but Del Piero, I think, was at another level. Tell us about your relationship with him.
Well, following Juventus, I know a lot of people who see this won't appreciate that, but, you know, it was weird because the initial talk was to bring Pavel Nedved. Well, Levitschka mentioned, I'm going to get and see if he wants to come play. And I said, yeah, like Nedved's going to come and play here. But look who then we get. And I remember it was a Friday night when it was announced. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know. And being a kit man, it's so different to overseas because they have the resources and so on. His first training session, he came in, he introduced himself, and I'm like, you know, this is Alessandro Del Piero. So my job then was to look after him. And it was to whatever he needed, and that was so on. But I developed a rapport. I knew my place with him, right? But he was absolute champion human being. So here we be having a coffee before training in the morning, and I'm getting a chance to ask him, what was Zidane like? What was Ravanelli like? What was Robbie Baggio like? The great Gianluca Vialli. Because you've got to remember, following this team, and this guy, he said they were brilliant to me when I came into Juventus, and they looked after me because I was younger. He said they were brilliant. But they're his mates, they're his cohorts. So with Alessandro, there's a couple of stories, if I can tell them. These are my favourites. He got a new pair of boots, and I wasn't allowed to divulge what brand they were. My job was to black them out, right? So I had to learn how to strip the leather and dye it, so on. But he said to me, I'd like the additional 6 aluminium studs put in. So I want the moulded sole, and I want the studs, as they do in Europe. Actually, Dwight did bring a pair over when he came over. And I thought, we don't have these resources. Now, the kit men overseas just have the drills, the inserts. So here I am, I've got to think on my feet. He wants to wear them on Sunday. This is Tuesday, sorry, my apologies. I ring my contacts, whatever. They said, Joe, there's a guy over at Hornsby. He does the shoes for the Australian cricket team. Maybe he can help you. So I drive to Hornsby, factory complex, find this Polish guy. And there as I walk in, there's Warner's, Clark's, all their shoes there. I told him what I needed. He said, not a problem. Can I ask who they're for? I said, oh, I can't tell you, right? He goes to work. He does them. He says, pick them up on Thursday. So I pick them up. I run like a madman, get them ready, because now I've got to strip them black. When I bring them to Del Piero on Friday morning, I said, Ali, look, this is how you want them. He looked at me. I said, what's the matter? He said, I gave you the wrong size. Friday. I've got to make this happen by Sunday. It's another trip back over after training. He said, Joe, you're lucky. I've only got so many inserts left. Picked them up Saturday after training, took them home, stripped them, blacked them. To be fair, he never ended up wearing them, but this was all part of it.
Yeah.
He had his personal trainer. We'd train at the stadium, meaning loading the van for a trip. You get a phone call at 11:15 at night. Oh, I need this, this and this for Ali for the morning. Which meant it's another trip through Macquarie at 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning. There's a lot which people didn't see. When I'd check him in at the airport, I always waited for him. So there was Del Piero and his photographer, Jonathan, champion guy. He was English, but he spoke fluent Italian. And we'd check him in. And then Ali would say to me, come on, Mr. Nuda, I'll buy you a coffee, which meant we'd go in the lounge. But here I was, myself, Del Piero, Jonathan, and that's how it was. And he knew that I knew my place, so he was never threatened. Then in conversation, he'd say to me, the beauty about playing here is I can just be my normal dad with my 3 kids in the park of an afternoon, but when I have to be Del Piero, I'll be Del Piero. And my favourite Del Piero story and it just shows the class of the guy. We came back from Newcastle one Friday. We came back at night. So we played Friday night in Newcastle, travelled back. Players are players. They're like rats on a ship. They just take off, get in their cars and leave. So as a kit man, you've got about 20 to 30 bags because you've travelled, trained up there and whatever. No worries. Go up to the kit room, which was up a ramp, turn the lights on, turn the alarm off, and I start bringing the gear up. I was used to it. I turn around and I could see a silhouette of somebody carrying 2 bags with a cap on back to front. So I'm standing there thinking, who's that? As he gets closer, it's Del Piero. I'm dying of embarrassment, thinking this guy is helping, our marquee players, helping me bring the gear up to the kit room. And I say to him in Italian, Ali, you've got a family at home. This is my job. He said, no, I'm going to help you. We'll do it together and we'll both go home together, right? So here he is, we're standing in the kit room and he's holding a bag of dirty laundry saying, where would you like me to put this? Politely. And I'm looking at him thinking, Champions League final, World Cup, you scored the goal, I think, was it in Kaiserslautern for Italy to qualify? Yep. Most games for Juventus. And you're asking me where to put the dirty laundry. We finished the job, shook my hand, we'd hug. Got into his car, waited till I turned the lights off, put the alarm on, flashed his lights and left. That's the sign of a difference. But working with Mickey Peterson, as I did, and Mickey Peterson would say when he was at Ajax, Van Basten would be getting the gear off the bottom of the bus and Marco Van Basten, right? When Dwight's first session here, everybody took off. Dwight stayed behind to do extra work, as they did. And then he turned to me and said, Joey, doesn't anybody stay behind and do extra shooting? And I said, no. He said, don't worry, I'll give you a hand to load the van. Dwight Yorke's got a trestle table under one and a Powerade esky. This is football in Australia. It's a true story.
What great stories. But on Del Piero, you saw both Alessandro and Del Piero. Tell us about the difference between the two.
Well, an example, when they'd come in for recovery, he'd bring his kids and they'd play up in the players' lounge, right? So Ali would go off and do what he had to do. The kids would turn the play. They were kids, but I didn't have the guts to tell them to reprimand them because they're Del Piero's kids. It was a Sunday afternoon. He walks back inside. They've turned the place upside down, and his daughter, Dorothea, at the time, was dancing on the lunch table. But she was a 3 or 4 year, whatever. He's walked in with a towel around his neck in his training kit. He was holding the towel like this, and he just stopped, and his face changed. And all I thought about was from the Bible where Jesus went into the temple, and they were using it as a Flemington market.
Yeah.
And he said, these were his words I'll translate it. He went, "Oh, is this the way that I've brought you up? Is this what your mother and I have taught you? How you behave in somebody else's place?" He said, "Dorothea, get off the table now. The table is for eating, and make sure that you leave this room the same as you found it." True story. And the kids did. And then that same day, there he is asking me for change because his son wanted something from the vending machine downstairs, some Skittles. Yeah. So here I'm going to the car to give him some change for that. And the other thing, in one, it was a stinking hot day. He did his individual stuff with Giovanni, his trainer. So I would always stay with him. I'd be behind the goals. Just watching him hit the free kicks was just phenomenal. And you look at him and you think, and then there was a group of people, it's stinking hot, it was a Monday afternoon. He said, "Hang on, how many balls do you put in each bag?" "It's usually 15. I said, "Only leave that. You've got people waiting. I'll do that. Go and sign." He said, No. 15 in each bag. So here's Del Piero putting 15 balls in each bag. He knew how I tied them, put them back in the room. He says, "You like your markers in colour coordinated." He said, "I'll fix this first." And then he looked at the people and he said, "All right." He looked at me, he said, "Now I'll be Del Piero. I've got to go to work."
That's right? An amazing story.
And he signed every autograph, photographs, whatever. And that was the difference, you see. And to see him at Brisbane Airport walking around with his backpack on with number 10, and nobody would bother him. But that's what he loved, the anonymity. My sister came to deliver something for me. She's sitting in the back of my van, we're chatting. Next thing he walks past, "Ali, do you mind, can I introduce you?" Because my sister lived in Italy. My sister was awestruck. Right. He walked off and my sister just looked like this. I said, "I've never known you speechless." I said, "That's a joke." She said, "I wouldn't have got within 50 kilometres of him in Italy." And I had introduced him to other family members when he first arrived at Stark Casino. Months later, I'd reintroduced him. I said, "Oh, this is my brother." He says, "Yeah, I remember him. You introduced me to him." Never forgot. Never forgot. So the people that tried to shaft him with the autographs, he always remembered who they were. Yeah. Too smart. You do not get to the top if you haven't got, and let Basque was the same.
Joey, tell us a little bit about Del Piero's first home match against Newcastle.
Versus Newcastle, the build-up was unbelievable, and he was made for this. Because you remember where he had been and whatever. So the atmosphere, I think it was 20-odd thousand going off memory. And then, was it first or second half? I don't remember. But when he took that free kick, it was just phenomenal to be able to witness it and see it. And then the crowd reaction was unbelievable. But he played it perfectly. He knew they had come to see him. But he knew he was comfortable with his success. He really was. He was just unbelievable.
Two other very poignant stories from the Sydney FC era. Terry Butcher, who was probably one of the biggest characters ever to coach the club. Tell us about what happened against Newcastle at McDonald Jones. He got a few things wrong, didn't he, with Alex Prosk?
He did. Second leg, semi-final. The photos are there. The old Newcastle, our dressing room would be under their supporters. So they would bang on the tin and make it as unpleasant for you as possible. First half, Paul Ocon was playing for Newcastle. Now, Paolo was very experienced, so he thought, "I'm going to unsettle this a little bit." With his experience, he puts on a stink. Something had happened, as I remembered it, so it was a all in. Alex Prosk got red carded. Now remember, to get a red card, you've got to come off, but you have to walk past the bench to get to the dressing room. So it's mayhem. Butcher's going off. Alex Prosk's walked off maybe 10 minutes, 15 minutes before half-time. We get in at half-time and the players are at each other. Yeah. "You didn't mark up, this happened," they're at it. And Butcher stands there, and he was a big man, but he had bad knees, so he used to stand there, he was knock-kneed, and he'd be going, he'd just come in and he'd go, "Be quiet, be quiet, be quiet." And it just went deadpan quiet. He says, "All right, we're going to change a few things for this second half. Where's the board? We're going to change our formation. So he drags the board across with the magnets. He goes, okay, we're going to change it to a back three or whatever, Okay, Broski, I'm going to get you playing more central than on the left. Now, mind you, Broski's just been sent off.
Yeah.
So, Broski, I want you playing, and Ian Cook has to lean over and say, Gaffer, it's been sent off. Sent off? Bollocks, he says. When? 15 minutes. Right. Okay, well, let's change the formation again. That was a great Terry Butcher story. That one when he rode his Lycra gear to training one day at Allianz Stadium. Full Lycra kit. Yep. Yeah, with his mountain bike from, I think he was living in the eastern suburbs. That was Terry Butcher. He'd walk into a team meeting. Edmund Capon was our chairman at the time. And he'd just walk in and said, how are you, chairman? By the way, what's with that tie? He said, I wouldn't wear that for a bet. This is in front of the whole squad. Lovely guy, lovely guy, Terry Butcher, champion guy.
One of the great storytellers in Australian football, Mike Cockrell, rest in peace, he wrote an amazing piece about you, or not just on you, but about Sydney FC and the Rats and the tradition of Rats around a Champions League match in Asia. Tell us a little bit about that.
It was Branko's first game. I think one of Branko's first games, we had gone to Asia to play in this AFC game. And look, call it what you like. Whenever I've seen a rat before a game, we've had a win.
Yeah.
And I can tell you this, which we haven't discussed. Before the Brazil game in UAE in 2003, we're training. Thursday night, dead calm. Dubai is an unbelievable place. I go to fetch a ball that's gone out of play at the training pitch. So I'm just running. Next thing, there's a dead rat that was the size of a dog. A bit exaggerated. I've jumped back. I've sidestepped and grabbed the ball, taken off. Mind you, it's dead. After the session, the boys are stretching. I notice Ange Postecoglou. Ange goes for a walk. Where did he go? He went down to see what had given me the shock. And it was the rat. Ange went in, because he had no need to go down there. Yeah. But he'd obviously seen me taken aback. So there was that one. And then Tahiti, when we won the AFC Championship there, Stan and I are walking back from a coffee. And mate, this one ran past us. I froze. We ended up winning to qualify for Japan. This one we saw in Shanghai.
For a Champions League?
Yeah, for a Champions League match. So we're on the bus. The late and great Mike Cockrell is sitting, if I remember, behind me, or Anthony Crea was behind, and Cockrell. So I'm telling the story about the rat. Unbeknownst to me, Cockrell's, being the great journo that he is making note of it. So we get back to Sydney, put your phones on, and we got back on a Friday morning, and I'm getting all these texts, oh, you're a big star now, Sydney morning. I had no idea. But Cockrell had written the article about the rat. And then, funny enough, we had rats at Macquarie. It was just the area. And I had one come out of the kit room one afternoon. It was quite groggy. So I said to Andrew Clark, who was our conditioning coach, Clark, you pick it up, will you? But let's get a photo. And we actually did our AFC accreditation
with the rat.
Jim Ratito. But I used to show it to Alex Brosk and say, oh, sorry, Broski, I've got your accreditation. And Broski used to love it.
That is too good, Joey.
So that's the story of the rat.
Joey, a humbling story. Marcello Lippi, the great Marcello Lippi, was the coach of Guangzhou Evergrande. Tell us a little bit about your encounter with him.
They were coming over to play a Champions League game against Central Coast at Gosford. I got a phone call at home, it was a Friday, from Tony Pinata, who was the CEO of Sydney at the time, and Tony said, look, Guangzhou want to use our facilities, can you go and look after them for the next 3 days? And I'm thinking, can I? You know, a chance to meet Lippi and see a club at that level. So my first night with them was a Sunday. So I went down there, opened up and whatever, and then Lippi walks in, and it was a big scale, three buses, the amount of stuff. And I was fascinated because here you had these Chinese people that spoke beautiful, fluent Italian. And mind you, Lippi spoke Italian to everybody, whether you were Italian or not. Yeah. So next thing, here I am in a corridor, and there's Marcello Lippi standing in front of me. I'm starstruck because coached Juventus, coached Italy to win the World Cup final. And it was like having a member of the family in front of you, like a good uncle. You felt so at ease with him. And I do remember he was holding my arm and he was telling me that it was unfortunate that Alessandro wasn't there because he was on holidays. It was in between seasons. And then he looked at me and said, I coached him for 9 years. And I'm like, yes, I do. And he was brilliant. Yeah. He was very hands-on. He was very, he found out that Željko Kalac had a goalkeeping clinic there the next night and he got excited and he must have asked 100 times, when is Kalac coming, when is Kalac coming? So obviously there was some history there from back in Italy when Spider was at Milan. So the next night Spider turns up and he is just larger than life. Of course. And Lippi got so excited and they hugged and you could just see the banter. It was like the professional banter. And if I may say, next thing, Lippi was speaking to one of the mothers in the group of the goalkeepers that Spider was coaching. And she happened to be Italian. So Lippi is speaking to her in Italian. And next thing you hear from the side, there's Spider saying, come on, leave her alone. You're old enough to be her grandfather. But Spider could get away with that. It was banter. Yeah. And then afterwards, the classic was in the change room. Remember Marcello, Lippi always had that impeccable hair.
Great hair.
Yeah, so he's had his shower and that. Spider's come out of the shower and if I may say, when Spider's hair is wet, he leans forward to groom it, and it's like Cousin It from the Addams Family. So he puts that 4 kilo of gel in, fixes the hair, and Lippi asks him in Italian, Kalac, do you mind
a cigarette, hey?
Yeah, do you mind if I borrow your hairbrush? So here I am cleaning up, and I'm watching Marcello Lippi at Macquarie University brushing his hair with Spider's hairbrush. That's when you really are grateful for being able to do that job. And you never take it for granted, ever, to be in a situation to see that. So that was one humbling moment.
There's another one too. Luiz Felipe Scolari, World Cup winning coach with Brazil. Yeah. Tell us a little bit about your encounter.
He was here for a Champions League game.
Yeah.
And they were having their famille session after us. And I used to park the van out the front of the change room. So I've gone out to get something and there he is with his staff and he's leaning on my van talking to them innocently. So when he sees me, he straight away takes his hand off the van and he apologises to me for leaning on it and putting his hand. And I just want to say, you've got to apologise to me. You can get in and drive it if you like. You can do what you want because you are who you are. Yeah. But just if I may, humbling experiences, Lipbarski was, because Pierre had been there, done that. And I remember being at a training session and he had 2 of the French players from the '82 World Cup turn up and they came specifically to see him. And when you know where these guys have been, it's just...
amazing.
Yeah.
Summing up the time at Sydney FC, there's one particular story where Anthony Crea, who's got a great personality, he really wound up Terry Butcher one day with a Napoli strip.
That's correct. Crea's just, we talk about the great characters I've met in the game. He's in the top 3, no ifs or buts with Spider. We used to train at Parramatta Stadium at the old Pertec. It was a small dressing room, so you're cramping so many people in this room. Terry Butcher wasn't happy about something this particular day. Crea's too smart. Yeah. So Anth's come into training wearing his jeans, Air Force Ones always, and he was always impeccable, always still is. But he had the long sleeve Napoli jersey on with the Mars at the front, with number 10 on the back, naturally. So he's walked in, hasn't said anything. G'day, Joey, how are you? Butcher's upset. I can't remember what happened. And he's saying, morning, Anth, how are you? So Crea turns around to hang his bag up and Butcher's mid-sentence just stopped and says, just look at him and says, what the F is that? How dare you wear that rubbish in here? That so-and-so cost us a spot in a semi-final at the World Cup. So he called the great man Armando a couple of choice names, but you seem to forget Butcher was there. And,
of course. He was one of the defenders
was Captain Blood, But he was a great guy, lovely man, Terry Butcher.
Now, tell us about the first ever Sydney derby. When you were with Sydney FC
correct.
at Pertec Stadium. Tony Popovic was the Western Sydney Wanderers coach. Tell us about that.
If I can just say briefly, Popper and I go back a long way. I looked after him as a player at Sydney, but I knew him from before. Popper approached me as he was putting this team together, and you've got to remember this club was formed out of John Satsama's kitchen, another absolute legend of a person and in the game. So Popper rings me, I want to get together for a chat. All right, we're starting this club, the Wanderers, I want you to be our kit man. I said, what? Wanderers, what's the Wanderers? He said, anyway, come down. Popper was at Star City. They hadn't put a team together yet. So I go in for this interview and I said, Popper, look, I've got a good job at Sydney FC. What do I want to come to the Wanderers for? I don't even know how long you're going to last. While I was there, he took a phone call from Michael Beecham. I heard how Popper spoke to Beecham. When he hung up, I looked at Popper and said, he'll sign, not a problem. Probably even be your captain. I said, just the way you spoke to him. I didn't go on board, right? So, first derby. We had no idea what we were going to at Pertec. No idea. We had seen it on TV. I remember stopping at McDonald's to get something to eat on the way up. There were people wearing the Wanderers kit in McDonald's and that. I didn't wear my uniform in because I thought if they see me, I won't make it to Pertec. I drive into Pertec and custom is you unload the gear, then they have an allocated parking spot for you. Park the van, walk into our change room. I knew where we were getting change. And on the whiteboard written is, welcome to Wonderland. Sydney is red and black. Slavisha. Slavisha was the kit man. He worked under me at Sydney. He took the job at the Wanderers. So I'll go out to find him. I said, I think it's funny. Don't forget where you got your start, I said. Now come and help me unload the van. And he did. And I said, and wipe that shit off the board. Anyway, so he helps me unload the van. We're still friends to this day, champion guy, Slavisha. So as I'm going to get in the van, there's usually a run sheet with your allocated parking spot. I don't have a parking spot. As I pull up to the security guy, the stealth bomber comes in. That's what I call Popper's Range Rover, the big land. There's Popper. I said, how are you? He said, good. The security guy looks at Popper and says, boss, he's giving me a hard time because he hasn't got a parking spot. Popper puts his serious face on and says, you make sure that he parks down past the Leagues Club. I looked at Popper and said, are you serious? He said, I'm serious. And he drove off in typical Tony Popovic style. Lights a fire and ran. So I had to go down near the Parramatta Leagues Club to park. True story. But what we experienced inside was, you can't describe it. It drains you. It used to drain you because they were on top of you. It was just red and black. That's all it was. And it was an incessant, consistent noise. We got through the first one. One that stands out for me is in Graham Arnold's time. Now, customary before a game, I would always bring Spider his coffee to the bench, right? To the bench, the standard. So I'd get ready and then I'd bring him and lean over and give it to him. And he wouldn't even look, he knew it was there and just getting right. So this particular game, Frank Farina's the coach, and I bring the coffee out and next thing it starts. Hey, JN, which are my initials, I'll have a cappuccino, I'll have a almond piccolo, they're giving it to me, right? During that game, I don't remember, I think maybe in the second half, Bernie Abini makes this run, and I do remember he's hit the ball, it's just roofed the net. I don't know what possessed me to do what I'm about to do next. I got up, turned to their supporters, and given 2 fingers and said, F you. Oh, from that second on, I got vilified. JN, you're a this, JN, you're a that, JN, you've got a big mouth, JN, I'm going to meet you at the back of the grandstand after the game. After the game, I had to get the security guard and say, listen, can you sort that out? I had instigated, and they were waiting for me. They wanted to take me around the back. Come January, where we beat them 4-3, I'm thinking to myself, there's no way this guy's going to remember who I was, right? We come out for the start of the game. No sooner did I come out of the chase, JN, I haven't forgotten, da-da-da. So while I'm sitting on the bench, Dr. Amir Ibrahim is our doctor, and this guy's leaning over going, hey, Doc, your mate JN is a so-and-so, he's a so-and-so. And I've turned to the doc and said, do you know him? And the doc said, yeah, he's one of my patients. I said, well, turn around and tell him to shut the fuck up. I said, yeah, no, Pertec was special.
Yeah.
I've got to say it was special. And then the derbies we had at the old Allianz were special as well. They were just, their supporters, I've got to give it to them. I've never seen anything like it, and probably you won't see it again. The RBB was something else. They were, and that first game when I went to the Wanderers and we played Sydney, we got done 4-0, the 60,000 odd crowd, that was unbelievable.
So tell us about your move to the Wanderers.
So I went to the Wanderers eventually. I had an interview with Tony Popovic and John Tsatsimas at Putney, at Dolcini's, and as we've walked out to go to our I didn't know JT well. We'd always see each other, always say hello. He'd always say to me, geez, your hair always looks perfect. He'd say unlike mine, or but JT. And then he looked at me in my eyes and said, you'll work for us one day. And it was time to go. So I went over in 16, 17 I went over. So that first year was fantastic. Popovic, Hayden Fox, Spider. It was just great atmosphere to work in. And it was just just a privilege to work with those guys. It really was.
Tell us a little bit about an insight into Tony Popovic, the coach back then, and what you think he's developed into now.
I spoke to Papa not long ago, so we do keep in touch. You're talking about a driven individual. You're talking about somebody that's had these values instilled in him from his upbringing. The hard work, the perfectionism, the attention to detail. Well, probably the best captain I've worked with. Look, you can't question Del Piero and Yorke, when you think about where they've been. But he's just a driven individual. And he's a brilliant man manager. Brilliant. So he will get the best out of this squad. They'll want to play for him. You want to be in his presence. You just do. Look, I was blessed. Papa would come down every afternoon religiously and come and sit in the kit room, and we would talk. We would talk about what we were going to do. I'd throw ideas at him. Yeah, this, that, and whatever. And he was very progressive, always looking. Yeah, I think he, stuff along the line of better is never. You've just always got to be improving. He tells great stories, like when he was a player as a kid, he'd score a hat trick, get in the car, he was all excited, but all his father would point out was, how about the ball you lost in the 36 minutes? So his father has a lot to do with the personality that he is. But you want to work for him. You just do. He's just a great... he's one of the best.
And you're seeing a whole lot of that attention to detail in the way he's approaching the Socceroos at the moment, aren't you?
Yeah, definitely. That's why he has people like Hayden Fox there, one of the best. Foxy I work with as a player. Foxy's a perfectionist, pedantic. Paul Ocon with his experience. So that's why he surrounds himself with those people on the other staff. Michael Mantikos, who does his analysis. But Popper was pretty much, once you prove yourself with him and once but you work for Popper. He does, look, when he was a player, he'd moved into assistant coaching, and I remember this particularly. I had torn my calf and we had gone to Perth and we had the training session the day before the game. And we've come out of the hotel and he just looks at me and says, on holidays, are you? And I said, what do you mean? He said, well, where's my cap? I said, sorry, Pop, it's back in the room. He said, he looked at the boot. I was wearing a moon boot. Don't worry about it. We get to train him. He always liked his initials on the top of his bottle. Yeah. I hadn't done them. The good coaches work like this. They just walk and play the mind games. He walk past, he goes, I don't know which bottle's mine. There's no initials. Somebody seems to be taking a good vacation. And it would churn me, and he knew it. But when I went to sign at the Wanderers, he wouldn't let me see the facility. Right. Because it was pretty much what they had achieved out of that, that's where he came into play. Yeah. They had nothing. and they played in 3 grand finals, won the Asian Champions League out of nothing, what they had, but the boys just got on with it and there was no excuses. But I said to Popper, can I at least see the facility? He said, sign your contract. It's taken me longer to sign you than some players. And he said, trust me, you'll love it.
Yeah.
There's a great photo that I don't have. We're in Japan, training in the wet. I've got nothing left. I've had to come back in the change room to get something. I've got that look on my face. JT took the photo and it's great. Sent it back. The graphic designer had it ready for me when we got back. So here I am walking back into the dressing room with this sour face with a caption, trust me, you'll love it, underneath. One of the best man managers, a leader of men, great captain at Sydney, Croatia, Sydney United, and a great captain at Sydney FC, because he came into the club and turned it around. Turned it around completely, implemented things that weren't happening, and who was going to argue with him? Who was going to argue with him? I remember in Hawaii when we were playing the Galaxy, he played this ball, Santalab wasn't happy with where he played it, and Santalab's given him some attitude. Half time, big change rooms were at the University of Hawaii there. I've got all the kit ready to go. I'm walking through with some cold towels and I can see what's going to happen. Popovic's got his shirt off, and in his day, he was just a man. He was a beast. And I can see him beelining for Santalab. Priceless. The telling off is one of the best stuffs. Because I said, oh, stuff the towels. I want to see this. This is just too good. But that's how he earned his respect. Never had that problem again.
Joey, Ange Postecoglou motivated in a different way.
Yes, he did.
And I know he's modified that to the current version. But what did you see back in the day?
Well, as I said, you knew what was expected of you with Ange. And if there was anything that was out of the ordinary or whatever, I think, and I can say this, Ange came into a system, and I do remember bumping into Ange when he was coaching Brisbane Roar, and we had a chat. And you look back on anything and he said, I would have done a few things differently. So he evolved as a coach and just got better and better because he didn't deviate. He did things his way. And this is the way it is. And Popper's the same. Popper says, I'm on a journey. I'm on a journey. I'm heading in a direction. If you fall off, I'm not coming back to get you because this is where we're heading. That's how he operates. You're either in or you're not.
And was Ange one of those coaches back then that had a philosophy that he wouldn't waver from? And obviously we're seeing parts of that play out now.
Yeah. And look what he's achieved by doing things his way. Obviously, when he goes to a club, he takes the staff that are very close to him and loyal. Ange will bounce back. He's a very driven individual. I used to like the fact that he, would, and all the good coaches do, they don't forget where they've come from. They don't forget and how it's applicable into what they're doing.
Okay, a final couple of questions about you. How do you reflect on your time in football?
Blessed, absolutely blessed. I worked hard. I'm not going to show off and I'm not patting myself on the back. The job was very demanding because a lot of things people didn't see, but I never took it for granted. Because remember, you were somewhere where others wanted to be. So you weren't going to give it up that easily. And I never was. I'd fight you tooth and nail. But no, I was blessed. I was blessed to work with the people that I got to work with, like your Anthony Crias, your Carl Atzes, Stan Evanchich, who taught me a lot. John Paul Di Marini, whom I worked with at a youth level, and then later on, Marcus Babbel, which was interesting. So, you sitting in a car taking a guy to Bunnings at Blacktown, he's driving, I'm in the passenger seat asking him about the FA Cup in 2000 at Cardiff. And he said, oh, Joey, in that accent, it was hot. But I remember saying to Perez and Henri, look, you go easy on me today and I'll go easy on you.
And Joey, I think that's the reason why you and I connected. I think it was the sense of humour and the quirkiness you found in football. I always wanted to talk to you before I called an A-League match when I saw you on the touchline. Yeah. And I think those were the stories that kept you in the game, weren't they?
Yeah. You had to see the lighter side of everything. Oh my God, there's so many. When Kit Room Confidential comes out, the book, we've actually got the cover of it. But look, it was 20 years or whatever all up, and there were a lot of sacrifices, and I was blessed to have a wife that understood and got it and supported me. But the friendships I made out of football, like here and meeting the two gentlemen here today, And you'd never take it for granted.
No.
You don't. And it's lovely to see people's reaction. And can I just say for the record, this man here gave me one of my best bits of memorabilia, which was a personal message from Martin Tyler from Qatar, which I cherish. And I was blessed enough that in the 2003 Champions League final from Old Trafford, if I may mention Andrew Osadi, through a contact, got him to sign the official press release program that you get. I didn't know who it was. Who's this guy? Mark Taylor. And it was Martin Tyler.
Well, that was done from the heart, Joey. And look, mate, thank you for sharing your story.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's been a great trip down memory lane. Good on you, mate.
Thank you, Bash.
No worries.
Thank you.